There are places in the world where a simple wrong glance can cost you your freedom, and holding an expensive smartphone can guarantee a one-way ticket. We've gathered 13 countries that have turned into territories of chaos. We'll show you places where children are taught to shoot before they learn to read. A country where a person can be sold at a market for the price of an old smartphone. And while the first entries on our list may only send chills down your spine, the final top 3 are a true gateway to hell, where the laws of civilization have been officially erased. Ready to stare into the abyss? Then let's go.
We're heading to El Salvador, a small but one of the most terrifying countries in Central America. Until recently, it was known as the murder capital of the world. For years, the country was under the control of 2 gangs, MS-13 and 18th Street Gang. Local gangsters with faces and bodies covered in tattoos became symbols of fear. Here, tattoos are not fashion, they are a criminal resume. Every teardrop under the eye, spiderweb, or 3-dot symbol tells a story of crimes and gang affiliation. For a long time, El Salvador was divided into invisible zones of influence. Residents couldn't cross into neighboring districts, and gangs collected rent from everyone, from bus drivers to street vendors. The country lived under an atmosphere of constant terror. Recently, everything changed. The government declared war on crime and built the largest prison in the Americas, the Terrorism Confinement Center, designed for 40,000 inmates. Footage from inside looks like something out of a dystopian nightmare. Thousands of prisoners with shaved heads sit packed together in concrete hangars under heavy guard. Now the streets are quieter, but it's the silence of strict control. Cities are patrolled by soldiers, and the feeling of total surveillance never goes away. El Salvador today is a striking example of how chaos was replaced by iron order, but at a very high price.
We're heading to South Africa, a land of incredible natural beauty and one of the highest rates of street crime in the world. If cartels rule in Mexico, here it's chaotic and aggressive street gangs. The epicenter is Johannesburg, where red lights are often ignored at night because stopping makes you an easy target. Carjacking, the violent theft of a car with passengers still inside, is extremely common here. Some roads even have warning signs marking high-risk hijacking zones. In the 1990s, a device called the Blaster was actually sold here. A legal flamethrower mounted on cars to scare off attackers. Today, people rely on armored windows and private security. In wealthy parts of Johannesburg, homes look like fortresses. High walls, electrified barbed wire, and signs reading "Armed Response." There are more private security guards here than police officers and soldiers combined. For tourists, downtown Johannesburg can be dangerous. The unspoken rule is simple: never take out your smartphone in public. Robbers act fast and brutally, and the huge gap between rich neighborhoods and nearby slums creates constant tension. Here, survival depends on your awareness every second. We're heading to Nigeria, the economic giant of West Africa, but a potential trap for tourists. Its oil wealth has fueled a brutal kidnapping industry. Foreigners, especially Europeans and Americans, often become assets, with ransom prices reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. Foreign oil workers live in what feels like a golden cage, behind high walls, under heavy security, and traveling into the city only in armored vehicles with armed escorts. Local gangs carefully plan kidnappings, hijack buses and boats, and take victims deep into the jungle, where their fate depends on negotiations. The danger doesn't come only from gangs. Lagos is a massive megacity living by the law of the jungle. A huge part of the population lives in slums like Makoko, a floating settlement with houses on stilts and filthy canals instead of streets. Police rarely enter these areas. Secret societies and gangs like Black Axe operate there, known for their brutality. The cities are filled with a heavy atmosphere: heat, diesel fumes, constant tension, and armed men on the streets. Here, the line between law enforcement and criminals can easily blur. If you don't have serious security, Nigeria is not a place for leisure travel. This country is a reminder that not every door is worth opening, even if there's big money behind it. We cross the Atlantic once again and arrive in Venezuela, one of the most tragic economic experiments of modern times. Once the richest nation in South America, it was swimming in oil wealth. Caracas was known as the Paris of Latin America, and locals flew to Miami for weekend shopping. Today, it feels like a disaster movie set, ruled by hunger and despair, where the laws of economics have been replaced by the law of the jungle. The first shock for visitors is money. Banknotes blow through streets and trash, ignored by everyone. Inflation became so extreme that the believer is worth less than the paper it's printed on. People make bags and hats out of cash because it's cheaper than fabric. Buying a chicken can mean carrying kilograms of money. Economic collapse has fueled brutal crime. Caracas has long been one of the world's most dangerous capitals. When people can't afford food, morality fades. Robberies happen for survival. Taking out your smartphone can put your life at risk. It could feed a family for months. Attacks are often instant. Two men on a motorcycle may strike without warning. Another nightmare is the colectivos, armed biker gangs that control entire neighborhoods. They act as the law, court, and police, and even security forces avoid them. Enter their territory, and no embassy can help. For tourists, Venezuela is a minefield. The US dollar is the only real currency, but carrying it makes you a target. Paying cash draws attention. Even hotel safes offer no guarantees. After dark, cities empty, windows are barred, and doors are locked tight. Even airport taxis can become traps, with cases of tourists kidnapped for ransom. Venezuela is a stark reminder of how fast civilization can fall into chaos, and how dangerous it is to be a wealthy traveler, where millions have forgotten the taste of meat. We continue our journey through Latin America and land in Rio de Janeiro, the land of carnivals, football, and endless beaches. From the heights of Christ the Redeemer, the city looks like paradise, a turquoise ocean, green hills, and the luxury hotels of Copacabana. But one glance at the mountain slopes, and the picture changes. Stretching across the hills are endless brick labyrinths, the favelas. Rio's favelas are not just poor neighborhoods. They are independent states within the city. There are no addresses, no real rules, and power belongs to drug cartels like Comando Vermelho. Once you cross that invisible border, Brazilian law no longer matters. A different code applies. The narrow streets, endless stairways, and tangled wires blocking out the sky are shocking. But even more disturbing are the teenagers carrying AR-15 rifles and other automatic weapons, guarding the entrances. They monitor every unfamiliar car and report movements over radios. The biggest danger for tourists is often the GPS. Trying to save time, it may route you through a favela. Within minutes, your car could be surrounded at gunpoint. Gangs often shoot at unfamiliar vehicles without warning, assuming they belong to police or rivals. Police rarely enter on foot. For raids, they use armored vehicles called caveirão. Big skull. When these machines roll in, war begins. Streets empty in seconds, shops close, and the air fills with gunfire. Residents often sleep on the floor to avoid stray bullets. And yet, the favelas have their own vibrant life. Funk karaoke parties, music, and dancing until sunrise. Tourists are offered guided tours, but no one can guarantee that gang truces won't collapse that very day. Rio is a city where paradise and hell are separated by a single street. You can sip coconut water on the beach, while just 500 meters away, a gun battle erupts on the hillside. The city is mesmerizing in its energy. But here, curiosity can be punished more harshly than anywhere else. We move north to El Salvador, the smallest and perhaps the most frightening country in the region. Until recently, it held the title of the murder capital of the world. For years, the country was held hostage by two of the most powerful gangs, Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18. Local gangsters are shocking in appearance. Their faces and bodies are covered in tattoos. Here, tattoos are not fashion. They are criminal resumes. Every teardrop under the eye, spiderweb on the elbow, or 3 dots on the hand tells a story of crimes and gang loyalty. It sends one message: we have nothing to lose. For years, El Salvador was divided into invisible zones of control. Residents couldn't enter neighboring areas ruled by rival gangs. Crossing the wrong line could mean death. Gangs extorted everyone, from bus drivers to elderly women selling corn on the roadside. This tax was called renta, a fee for the right to live and work. The country existed in an atmosphere of total terror. But recently, everything changed. The government declared total war on crime and built the largest prison in the Americas, the Terrorism Confinement Center, designed for 40,000 inmates. Footage from inside looks like a dystopian nightmare. Thousands of prisoners with shaved heads and tattooed bodies crouch in massive hangars wearing only white shorts. They are moved at a run, heads down, under armed guard. No mattresses, no walks, no visits, just concrete isolation for life. Today, the streets of El Salvador are quieter, but it is the silence of strict control. Cities are patrolled by heavily armed soldiers. It is safer to walk around now, but the feeling of living inside a giant military barracks never disappears. El Salvador is now a striking example of one extreme replacing another. Chaos gave way to iron order, but the price was total control. People still speak in whispers, fearing the return of the old days or being caught in a random raid. It is a country with a heavy atmosphere, where the history of violence will remain in its walls for decades to come. We leave the Western Hemisphere and head to Libya, a country whose fate has become a tragic example of how quickly wealth can turn to ashes. Just 15 years ago, it was one of the most prosperous nations in Africa, with some of the best roads on the continent, free healthcare, and ambitious desert greening projects. Today, all that remains are ruins and bullet-riddled road signs. After the fall of the regime in 2011, the country fractured. There is no longer one government, one army, or one police force. The land is divided among dozens of rival militias, warlords, and tribal forces, where the biggest gun makes the rules. Traveling through Libya feels like stepping into Mad Max. The symbol of local power is a Toyota pickup with a heavy machine gun or anti-aircraft weapon mounted in the back. These technicals race across the desert, and you do not want to be in their way. The country's infrastructure lies in ruins. Tripoli International Airport has become a graveyard of burned-out airplanes. Luxury hotels have turned into sniper nests and militant headquarters. Even being inside a building is dangerous. Front lines shift daily, and a stray shell can hit at any moment. But the most horrifying reality is that slave markets have returned in Libya. The country has become a trap for African migrants dreaming of reaching Europe. Instead of crossing the Mediterranean by boat, many end up at auctions, sold in garages or parking lots. A strong man can be sold for as little as $400, the price of a used smartphone. For tourists, Libya is a black hole on the map. Entering legally is nearly impossible, and entering illegally can be deadly. You could be kidnapped for ransom, fuel, or ammunition. Even diplomats travel only in armored convoys. Libya is a harsh reminder of how fragile civilization truly is. Remove law and order, and the ruins of once rich cities descend into pure chaos, where survival belongs not to the smartest or richest, but to the most heavily armed. We leave the deserts of Africa behind and head into the jungles of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. Until recently, it was one of the most mysterious and captivating travel destinations. The ancient pagodas of Bagan, hot air balloons rising at dawn, and an atmosphere of eternal Buddhist peace. But today, that fairy tale has turned into a military thriller. In 2021, a military coup changed everything. The junta seized power, and the country became a closed-off zone. Students, doctors, and teachers fled into the jungles to fight back against an army equipped with tanks and fighter jets. With limited access to real weapons, resistance groups began 3D printing firearms and modifying civilian drones for attacks. For tourists, the danger is extreme. In major cities like Yangon, paranoia is everywhere. You may be stopped on the street and forced to unlock your phone. Photos of protests, checkpoints, or even having a VPN app installed can lead to arrest. Foreigners are easily suspected of espionage. Even more terrifying are the border areas of the Golden Triangle, once known for the opium trade, now transformed into hubs of digital slavery. In places like Shweikoko, people are lured in with fake job offers, have their passports confiscated, and are forced into online scam operations. Private armies guard these compounds. Even culture can become a trap. Myanmar is deeply religious, and tourists have received prison sentences for having a Buddha tattoo on their leg, seen as an insult to a sacred figure. Today, Myanmar remains a country of breathtaking beauty, but one that is far safer to admire through a screen. Traveling there now is like willingly stepping into a cage with a hungry tiger. We return to Central America, to Honduras, where life is no joke. For years, the country held the world record for the highest murder rate, and although the statistics have improved, the streets are still terrifying. Here, the war is not between armies, but between neighborhoods, streets, and even houses. The main reason is drug trafficking. Honduras has become a key bridge for moving drugs from South America to the United States. This has fueled corruption and empowered gangs that control cities like San Pedro Sula and Tegucigalpa. Crossing into areas controlled by Mara Salvatrucha or rival gangs can be deadly. For locals, this means paying a war tax, extortion demanded from everyone. Shop owners, taxi drivers, bus drivers, and even street vendors. Refuse or delay payment, and the consequences are immediate. Businesses shut down, and people flee the country in caravans. Traveling through Honduras feels like living inside a crime report. A security guard with a shotgun outside a bakery is normal. Cities are surrounded by fences topped with barbed wire, and windows are covered with bars. Even fast food restaurants are guarded better than banks. Public transportation is especially dangerous. Brightly painted buses often become traps. Armed gangs board and calmly collect phones, money, and jewelry. Many passengers hide most of their cash in socks, leaving a small amount in their pockets for robbers. The value of human life here can be shockingly low. A hitman can reportedly be hired for as little as $50. Police are often powerless. Gangs have better weapons, faster cars, and more money. If a foreigner decides to walk at night outside the tourist areas of Roatan, it can be a fatal mistake. They may be mistaken for an agent or simply an outsider on the wrong territory. Honduras is a land of stunning nature, ancient Mayan ruins, and kind people who have become hostages in a brutal survival game where the rules change every day, and the judge is often a man with a gun. We head into the heart of Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a country often called a geological scandal. It holds vast reserves of gold, diamonds, and cobalt, a key component in smartphone batteries, with about 70% of the world's supply mined here. Yet this wealth has become a curse. Resource extraction looks like an anthill. Thousands of people, including children, work by hand in toxic mud without protection, healthcare, or stable pay. Cobalt dust damages their health, but stopping means having no food. The danger isn't only in the mines, it's also the ongoing conflict. Government forces and dozens of rebel groups fight for control of resources, jungles, and roads. For them, human life is cheap, while foreigners can be valuable targets for ransom. Tourism exists, but is extremely risky. The main attraction is Virunga National Park, home to rare mountain gorillas. It's a place of incredible beauty, but getting there is dangerous. Convoys are ambushed, and kidnappings and attacks occur. Over 200 rangers have been killed in recent years protecting the park. Even cities are unsafe, with high crime, corruption, and extortion. In remote areas, armed groups hold power, and even teenagers may control checkpoints. The Congo is a tragic paradox. A country that fuels the modern tech world lives in poverty and violence. Here, natural beauty exists side by side with extreme human cruelty, making it one of the harshest places on Earth. We cross an invisible line and enter Somalia, a place where the state barely functions. The government controls only parts of the capital, Mogadishu, while the rest is divided among armed groups. The country is known for piracy, not romanticized, but carried out by heavily armed militants who turned hijacking ships for ransom into a business. On land, the situation is even worse. Mogadishu, once called a pearl, has become a city of Postayani Voyni. The militant group Al-Shabaab operates here, banning Western culture and viewing foreigners as enemies or sources of ransom. Moving through the city is like a military operation: armored vehicles, security teams, and armed convoys. Even that offers no guarantee of safety. A common tactic is attacking hotels, blowing up gates and storming inside to take hostages. As a result, buildings resemble fortresses with concrete walls, guard towers, and heavy security. Society is divided into clans, and without their protection, a person is defenseless. There is no real police system, only guarded zones and the rest of the city, which remains highly dangerous. Somalia is a stark example of total collapse. Survival depends on who has weapons, and life becomes a constant struggle. We move up to the penultimate level, the Central African Republic, a so-called ghost state. On paper it exists, but in reality the government controls little more than the capital, Bangui, and the road to the airport. The rest is lawless territory ruled by armed groups. The country's history is filled with dark episodes. In the 1970s, it was ruled by Jean Bedel Bokassa, who declared himself emperor and became infamous for his brutality. His era left behind a deep legacy of fear. Today, the Central African Republic is a land of stark contrasts. People mine gold and diamonds by hand, resources worth millions, yet live in extreme poverty. These riches have become a curse, fueling constant sangharsh between armed factions fighting for control. Adding to the chaos are foreign mercenaries guarding mining sites and operating by their own rules. For a tourist, this means extreme danger. Even suspicion can lead to deadly consequences without any due process. Traveling outside Bangui is like playing Russian roulette. Roads are lined with makeshift checkpoints where armed teenagers demand payment. A wrong move or refusal can cost you your life. There is no real security, communication, or outside help. The Central African Republic stands as a stark example of total collapse, where power belongs to those with weapons, and human life holds little value. Welcome to the finale. Haiti, a place often described as hell on earth. The remnants of the state have collapsed. Police, army, and government authority have largely disappeared, replaced by chaos. The capital, Port-au-Prince, is about 80% controlled by gangs. The most powerful is G9 Family and Allies, led by a figure known as Barbecue, notorious for extreme brutality. These groups carry out public acts of terror, burning homes with people inside. In 2024, The situation spiraled completely out of control. Gangs stormed prisons and freed thousands of inmates. Police fled, stations were destroyed, and equipment was seized. The presidential palace lies in ruins, and governance is effectively paralyzed. The city now resembles a post-apocalyptic scene. Barricades, smoke, gunfire, and no reliable access to water or electricity. Hospitals are shut down, kidnappings happen even in daylight, and both the airport and seaport are largely inoperable, making escape extremely difficult. Haiti today stands as a stark example of total societal collapse, where survival has become the only rule. Now be honest with yourself. Which of these countries would you risk staying in for at least 24 hours for $1 million? Share your thoughts in the comments. It'll be really interesting to read. If some of these stories gave you chills, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Take care of yourself, value your freedom, and see you in the next videos. Now be honest with yourself. Which of these countries would you risk staying in for at least 24 hours for $1 million? Share your thoughts in the comments. It'll be really interesting to read. If some of these stories gave you chills, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Take care of yourself, value your freedom, and see you in the next videos.